Lamin Yamal was known for his calm demeanor and quiet confidence, traits that made him popular among his friends and family. He was always the first to offer help, the one who would listen patiently, and the friend who could be counted on to brighten any gathering with his subtle humor. Little did he know, his friends and family had a plan to turn his life upside down for a few hours, a prank so elaborate and well orchestrated that it would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about his relationships. It all began at a family gathering. Lamin had just returned to his hometown after months of being away, attending school and settling into the hustle and bustle of a new life. He was eager to reconnect with his parents, siblings, cousins, and friends. The gathering was to celebrate his return, and the excitement was palpable. Everyone was looking forward to the event, but behind the smiles and cheers, a cunning plan was in the works. It started with a simple idea from Jamil, Lamin's childhood friend. They had been close since childhood, sharing every major moment of their lives together. Jamil had always admired Lamin's easygoing nature, but he had also noticed how Lamin could sometimes be a bit oblivious to things happening around him. That particular quality made him the perfect target for the prank. Imagine if Lamin walked into the gathering and no one even noticed he was there, Jamil had joked one evening, as he sat with his friends at the local cafe. It was meant to be a light-hearted thought, but the more they discussed it, the more the idea took root. The plan evolved quickly. Jamil and the others decided they would each play a small role, ensuring that, as Lamin walked into the room, the entire family and friends would act as if he were invisible. No greetings, no hugs, nothing. Just a complete and utter disregard for his presence. It was a harmless prank, they assured themselves. A funny moment that would last a few hours and then be laughed about for years to come. "I'm not sure about this, Jamil," said Tariq, another close friend of Lamin. He was always the voice of reason in the group. "What if he gets upset? You know how sensitive he can be about feeling excluded." "Trust me," Jamil said, waving away Tariq's concerns. "Lamin's too cool for that. He'll just think it's all a joke, and then we'll reveal it. He'll laugh. It'll be legendary." The day of the gathering arrived, and Lamin was already on edge with excitement. He had missed his family, his old friends, and the familiar sights of his hometown. As he stepped into the house, he was greeted by a warm hug from his mother and a quick smile from his father, who were busy setting up the table for dinner. His younger brother, Ahmed, was in the kitchen with a few cousins, laughing and joking about something. But something felt odd. The usual energy of the gathering seemed off. People were moving around, preparing food and chatting, but there was a strange sense of disconnection in the air. Lamin shrugged it off, thinking it was just his overactive imagination after months of isolation. Lamin walked further into the room, expecting to be greeted by his childhood friends, but there was no enthusiastic wave or joyful shout of his name. Instead, everyone seemed too engrossed in their own conversations. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Jamil, who was sitting with a group of friends near the window. Lamin smiled and made his way over, ready to settle in and catch up. But when he reached the group, he was met with only blank stares. "Hey, Jamil," Lamin greeted, tapping him on the shoulder. Jamil looked up but didn't react. He quickly glanced at Lamin, his expression unchanged, and turned back to the conversation. The others continued talking, oblivious to Lamin's presence. Lamin blinked, confused. "Jamil," he repeated, slightly louder this time. Still, nothing. Jamil's eyes didn't even acknowledge him. He felt his stomach twist. This couldn't be real. Maybe Jamil was preoccupied, he thought. Perhaps something else had his attention. But as he stood there, waiting for a response, an uncomfortable silence stretched between them. The others in the group, Tariq among them, barely seemed to notice him standing there. "Okay, what's going on?" Lamin muttered under his breath, his voice low but frustrated. He glanced around, trying to catch someone's attention. He waved his hand in front of Tariq's face. Tariq simply blinked, then looked right past him without even acknowledging his presence. Lamin was now standing in the middle of the room, a strange sense of dread creeping over him. Was this some kind of joke? He wasn't sure, but something felt completely off. He decided to walk toward his parents, hoping they would notice him. His mother, who had always been the one to greet him with open arms, was sitting in the living room, chatting with some family members. Lamin approached her, ready to ask why no one had even acknowledged him.
"Mum," he said gently. She looked at him but didn't smile.
Her expression remained neutral.
"Oh, it's you.
Did you bring the dessert?" she asked, her voice calm and detached.
Lamin's heart sank. "What do you mean, did I bring the dessert?" "Mum, it's me, Lamin."
His mother simply nodded.
Yes, of course.
But where is the dessert?"
"We're waiting on that."
Lamin stood there, stunned. His mother had always been the first to express joy at seeing him.
This was entirely unlike her. "Mum, what's going on?"
"Why is everyone acting like this?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion and hurt. But before she could answer, his father walked by, giving him a brief nod, as though he were a casual acquaintance, not his son. "Lamin, don't forget to set the table, will you?" he said before walking into the other room.
Lamin felt a cold sweat form on the back of his neck.
His mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. He had been at family gatherings many times before, and this wasn't the way things went. There was always excitement, always warmth. But here, there was nothing. His confusion deepened as he looked around the room. It was as if no one could see him at all. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, everything felt so normal, but it all seemed completely disconnected from him.
There was one thing left to do. Lamin needed answers.
He walked out to the garden, where a few of his cousins were playing soccer. Surely they would acknowledge him. But as he approached, they kicked the ball between them without so much as a glance in his direction. He stood there, feeling like a ghost, his mind trying to make sense of the situation. "Hey!" Lamin called out, louder this time. One of his cousins, Rashid, stopped, but not to look at him. Instead, he turned his back, muttering something under his breath about a bad pass and moving to rejoin the game. The rest of the cousins continued playing, as if he wasn't even there. Lamin felt his frustration build.
This had gone on long enough. What was going on? Was he dreaming? Or worse, was he losing his mind?
The pieces weren't fitting together, and panic began to settle in his chest. His own family, his closest friends, it was as if they were all avoiding him, as if he didn't exist. As he stood there, the reality of what was happening began to set in.
Something was wrong, deeply wrong.
And he needed to find out what it was, before it destroyed him. But the truth was far stranger than he could have ever imagined.
His family and friends weren't avoiding him.
They weren't indifferent. They were simply playing their part in the most elaborate prank of his life. Lamin stood frozen in the garden, his mind swirling with confusion and a growing sense of unease.
Every second felt like an eternity as he tried to comprehend what was happening.
The laughter from his cousins seemed distant, almost as though it belonged to a different world. He felt like an outsider in his own life, like he was watching everything happen from the outside, helpless and invisible. For the first time in his life, Lamin began to question his own perception.
Was this all in his head? Had something changed in the way he saw the world?
Maybe his relationships weren't as strong as he had thought, maybe his return wasn't as eagerly anticipated as he had believed. Desperation began to creep in as he made his way to the living room again.
He needed to talk to someone, to get some clarity.
His eyes scanned the room for any sign of recognition, but there was nothing. His father was sitting on the couch, reading a newspaper, and his mother was talking to an aunt in the corner. No one looked up at him, no one acknowledged his presence. Lamin felt a sudden urge to scream, to shake them all, to make them see him, but he knew he couldn't do that. If they really couldn't see him, it would only make him seem more insane.
"Hey, Mum."
"Dad," he called out, his voice trembling.
Still, no response.
The weight of it all was unbearable. It was as though he was trapped in some sort of nightmare, unable to wake up. He felt the sting of betrayal, the crushing weight of being completely forgotten by the people who should have known him best.
What had he done wrong? What had happened to the warmth and connection that once defined his relationships with his family and friends?
Just when he thought he could take no more, his phone buzzed in his pocket.
Lamin quickly pulled it out, desperate for some sort of distraction, or perhaps, some form of validation that he was, in fact, real.
It was a message from Jamil.
"You okay? Everything alright?" Lamin's heart skipped a beat. It was the first sign of life he'd seen from Jamil all evening.
He quickly typed back, his fingers shaking as he tried to make sense of everything.
"Jamil, what the hell is going on? Everyone is acting like I'm invisible. My parents, my friends, even you. What's happening? Is this some sort of joke?" He hit send and waited.
The seconds felt like hours as he stared at the screen, desperately hoping for some sort of response that would make sense of it all. Finally, the dots appeared on the screen as Jamil typed a reply.
"It's all part of the prank, Lamin. Relax, man. We've been planning this for weeks." Lamin's mind went blank.
He read the message again, then again, hoping it would change, hoping he had misread it. But no, the words were clear. It was a prank. A joke. And he had fallen for it. A mixture of disbelief, confusion, and a deep sense of embarrassment flooded over him. He felt the anger start to rise in his chest. How could they do this to him? He had trusted them all, believed in their friendship and love, and they had turned that trust into a game.
A cruel game, at that.
His fingers trembled as he quickly typed his response.
"You've got to be kidding me.
You all made me think I was going crazy.
You made me feel like I didn't even exist."
The reply came quickly.
"We're sorry, man. We didn't mean for you to get upset.
It was all supposed to be a fun prank.
We'll explain everything when you're ready."
Lamin paced the room, his anger giving way to frustration and, eventually, to a strange sort of resignation. His mind was reeling, trying to process what had just happened. But despite his overwhelming emotions, a part of him had to admit that it had been an impressive prank.
Elaborate. Well executed.
And, if he were being honest, the perfect way to mess with him.
He needed answers.
He needed to confront his friends and family. His heart was still pounding, but he knew there was no avoiding it. He had to face them and get the truth, even if it meant embarrassing himself in front of everyone. Lamin marched back into the living room, his phone still in hand. He took a deep breath, his chest tight, and stood in the middle of the room, staring at his mother and father. Both of them were still talking, but this time, Lamin wasn't going to let them ignore him.
"Mom, Dad," he called again, louder this time.
His parents finally looked up at him, as if seeing him for the first time. There was a brief flash of surprise on their faces, but it quickly faded.
"Lamin, dear, where have you been?"
"We were looking for you," his mother said, her voice calm but laced with a slight hint of concern.
Lamin's jaw tightened, and he took a step forward. "Where was I? I've been standing here for the last hour, and you've all been acting like I'm invisible. No one has said a word to me, no one has greeted me.
And now you're acting like nothing happened.
What's going on?"
His father looked at him, then exchanged a glance with his mother. Then, with a sigh, he motioned for Lamin to sit down. "Son, this was all part of the plan," his father said, his tone surprisingly sincere.
Lamin stared at him, shocked. "The plan? What plan?"
Jamil appeared in the doorway, his face sheepish, but there was a twinkle in his eye. "We've been setting this up for weeks, man. We wanted to see how you'd react if we completely ignored you for an entire evening.
We didn't think you'd get so upset. It was supposed to be funny."
Lamin's mind was racing.
He couldn't quite believe what he was hearing.
His friends, his family, they had all been in on it. They had planned this. Everyone had kept up the act, pretending he didn't exist, all to pull off the ultimate prank.
"This was all a joke?" Lamin asked, his voice low. Jamil nodded, trying to suppress a grin. "Yeah. We all had a laugh while you were freaking out.
We never thought you'd take it this seriously, man.
But don't worry. We'll make it up to you. We just wanted to mess with you a bit." Lamin felt a wave of conflicting emotions.
Anger, embarrassment, confusion, but also a strange sense of relief. The tension in his chest began to loosen as he realized he hadn't lost his mind. It had all been a joke, albeit a cruel one.
He wasn't invisible. He wasn't forgotten. As the truth sank in, Lamin couldn't help but let out a short laugh, despite himself.
The absurdity of it all was almost too much to process. "You guys are crazy," he muttered, shaking his head. The room burst into laughter.
His family, his friends, they were all in on it.
Jamil came over and clapped him on the back, grinning.
"Gotcha, man. You should have seen your face." Lamin, still processing everything, couldn't help but laugh along, though it was a bit forced.
He had been the butt of the joke, but the prank had been so elaborate, so carefully executed, that it was hard not to appreciate the effort. He could already tell that this would be the story of the year, the one that would be retold at every gathering for years to come.
"All right," he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "You got me. I'll give you that. But next time, I'm getting you all back."
The room erupted into laughter again, and this time, Lamin felt the warmth of his friends and family surrounding him. The prank had been cruel, but in the end, it was a reminder of the bond they shared. It was a reminder that, no matter how much they messed with him, they still cared.
And so, the evening continued, with everyone recounting their favorite moments from the prank, teasing Lamin about how he'd almost lost it.
But as the night wore on, Lamin's frustration faded, replaced by the familiar comfort of being home, surrounded by people who, for all their pranks and jokes, were the ones who knew him best.
For now, the prank was over. But Lamin knew one thing for sure: he'd be ready next time.
And when the tables were turned, he'd make sure they'd never forget it.
Thank you very much. See you in the next video.